In the north, they thought they knew all there was to know of war. Until the War of the Rift. While the Southern King hid, warm in his keep, the Darkwings cut their bloody trail from frozen north to winter's edge. Alone, the Warden and his small garrison turned their whiskers to the icy wind. At the end of hope, in a last barrage, they wiped Batkind from the land and memory. With no sign of the Darkwings' return, in time, few believed them little more than a fairy's tale. But at Mount Cauldron, time had been all they needed. An old enemy, claws free of their icy tomb, and hungers for vengeance. But not all is lost. King Rattus brings north a cause for hope. A bastard prince, placed in the paws of the Warden of the Wastes to raise as his own. A secret of blood, never to be told. Now, fate calls for a hero in a murderous screech, and one young rat will answer. This mother had left her young to fight alone, but the same could not be said of Lord Eivor as he leapt to his son's side. It was Lord Eivor's mighty blade that took her head, but the fight was won together. He had found his father. The Warden stood alone, holding back a whole Darkwing army, their cruel Count Kazak leading them. His father charged, but the Darkwing Count was as fast as he was strong. The Winter's crown tumbled to Arlo's feet, now without a head to rest on. There was no time to grieve his father, as from above the Count revealed his greatest weapon, a Sky Scorcher. Not a fairy's tale, but an undead beast whose very breath could level kingdoms. And its eye was trained on Arlo. All that came next was a fog of bloodlust, snapping jaws, and the beating of leathery wings. But there could be no victory. Arlo awoke, groggy and warm to his father's shouts. Only he wasn't in bed. The warmth was from the fire that had engulfed Winter's Edge, and the shouts were his uncle's. The only other survivor of the Darkwing attack, Leaf was bruised and his hind paws barely steady. He'd seen villagers flee to the outskirts. Arlo knew it was up to him to make them safe. His foe was beaten, but seeing what had been inflicted on Hilda and Krunk, Arlo's need for vengeance was only growing. Suddenly wished to be within the walls of Winter's Edge, to hear the boot and boom of his father at dawn, a sound he realized he'd never hear again. He needed to return to whatever was left and make his plan. Slither Scale was defeated at last. The young ranger took no spoils, and with only a brief hoot of thanks, he was gone. Arlo hoped the ranger's thirst for revenge was finally sated. Understood now how one beast could feel like an army. He wondered if he would get a bonus for felling this giant as well. More bottles lay outside the forge, which was otherwise as quiet as every other dead thing that haunted this place. The pile of bottles was large, even for one who drinks like a merman. And it seemed to be breathing. Arlo was amazed the merman could swing his hammer, let alone see who he was hitting. A couple of thumps on the head soon brought him to his senses. Arlo tried not to think of how many friends, old and new, lay dead. He still had more to do.
the Sky Scorcher defeated, the threat to the Golden Forest was gone. As Arlo looked down into the Scorcher's nest, the single egg glimmered in his eyes. Unable to bring himself to destroy it, Arlo kept it for himself. Who knew if it would come in handy later? Pursued the great ice worm to the peaks of White Whisker, and in the shadow of Mount Cauldron, it fell at last. The rabbits of the warren were safe. Upon tracking the beast to its nest, Arlo wondered if he had made a mistake. He soon realized that it was this monster bird that was mistaken. The egg in that nest was no monster bird egg.
The farmer was free, and Arlo sent him home. He would not be these chicks' first meal. The cow grub mooed, lying helpless at the center of the nest. Arlo would have to deal with the mudworm first. The smell of the beast's dung hit him as hard as the one who made it. Arlo wondered if he could fight while holding his breath. Of the quills fell clattering to the ground. The backstabber was defeated at last. But from the center of the cave came a faint squeak. A dank and unsettling place. It had to be the Queen's lair. Arlo wondered what his father would say if he could see him risking his life for frogs. The tail spinner queen was dead, and the frogs were soon at work rebuilding the village. The warden was sure mammalian-amphibian relations would be forever changed. Arriving at the nest, Arlo was surprised to see a toad core, especially as they had become a favorite meal of the Scorcher. As the toad core scoffed down one of the eggs, it became very clear why it had been lured in. No stealth claw, but an attack nonetheless. A band of warrior frogs harassing the village blacksmith. Their eyes lit up at the sight of Short Tongue. Only they called him by a name which we need not repeat here. Short Tongue and Arlo returned the insult, and with more than words. The blacksmith was glad to head to Bogmire and safety. All should have been silent in the blacksmith's wake, but Arlo was suddenly aware of a squelching of mud around them. The stealth claw was here. They had won this round, but they could not leave it at that. Frog and Rat agreed to hunt the stealth claw to its lair. From afar, the villagers seemed lifeless, lost in battle or to the cold. But up close, the truth was revealed. They were training dummies. It was a trap. The assassin was vicious, but Frog and Rat held their ground. Injured, the attacker fled, but Short Tongue was not about to let him escape. The pair found him licking his wounds at a makeshift camp. The assassin seemed to forget his pain as he took up his weapon. With the assassin defeated, Arlo breathed a squeak of relief. But Short Tongue was not done. He needed to know who had sent them. The frog's frantic search through the assassin's belongings gave up the answer. A gold coin bearing the mark of Glubba the Gut. Short Tongue asked Arlo to meet him at Bogmire. He had work to do. The warlord sat surrounded by enslaved frogs and laughed at the pair's demands for their freedom. He had a surprise for his guests. The stench of the dungeon hit them as hard as its floor. A floor that started to shake, and from the shadows emerged the largest toad core that Arlo had ever seen. frog slayed the beast, its bloated corpse sinking slowly into the mud. Arlo felt a pang of regret. It had been a slave as much as the others. They found the warlord's soldiers celebrating the pair's defeat. Rat and Frog were happy to correct them. Seeing the last of his soldiers fall, Glubba croaked his rage. He was the greatest warlord of all frog kind, and they would regret this day. Glubba's tyranny had ended. Short Tongue offered the frogs a home at Bogmire Forge. Together, he and Arlo had freed the Rift as well as the frogs. Perhaps this would be an era of peace for both. The burial chamber revealed both tales were true. A treasure hoard, and guarding it was the ancient Draugr Harrod Bluefang. A fearsome warrior, now laid to rest. More importantly, Arlo had found his treasure. defeated the beast in a fury that sent all other bats from the ruin in terror. Robin was bereft. It was meant to be a simple hunt. He could not understand these flying abominations. Arlo offered what solace he could. Tuck was at Winter's Edge, where Robin could take some rest.
cultist defeated, the elder drew something from his cloak. Lorenzo's arm. He swallowed it whole. Arlo soon wished that had been the worst of it. Raised his war horn. Its unearthly screech seemed to stir the very air into fury. This was not the wind, but the beating of leathery wings. Camp leader was defeated, but they had to warn the rabbits. Darkwings were on their way. Kazakh had sent one of his strongest generals, Necromancer Guraz. His defeat would rob the bats of a great weapon. Warren was safe in Rabbit Paws once more. Gray Ears swore that if the Warden of the Wastes ever called for help, the rabbits would answer. Was no match for Arlo's superior skill. Reggie could already see this would be a tournament that they would squeak of through the ages. Was a veteran too, used to fighting monsters and darkwings with ice under paw. Dennis did not compare. Now the crowd cheered for him. In stature and skill, there was not a whisker between them. They shook paws in truce. No rat could doubt Arlo's worth now. Reggie said to meet him by the docks. Together, they would wipe out the Dark Wings once and for all. Together, they would attack Mount Cauldron. They moved in step, a flawless dance of blood and vengeance. Neither knew that their own blood united them, but perhaps just then they felt it. Erica fought the Darkwing Smith. The fiery heat at the heart of the mountain burned hotter than any forge. The beast fell, but there was no time to rest. Leaving Robin to tend to Bertle, Arlo headed to the summit to find Reggie. The icy wind bit at his fur as he emerged on the peak. He saw, silhouetted in the mist, Count Kazak, and in his claws he held King Reggie, dangling over the edge. With a shriek of victory, the Count let go of the king and seemed to melt into the fatal mist. They flew into battle. The Warden and the Count's weapons clashed, echoing across the mountain.
corrupted body fell heavy on the ground. Arlo rushed to the edge, calling for the king, but the only answer in the mist was the icy wind. The war was won, but Arlo could not feel the victory. He barely noticed his friends join him. The fellowship bowed their heads in honor of their brave king. The tale of this war would be as much of loss as of winning. They returned to the Crimson Keep in near silence, each with their thoughts. There would be no victory parades. Arlo heard a commotion ahead. In the throne room were raised voices. Bertel stood in front of Reggie's throne, holding the crown, asking who should now carry this burden. Dennis barged forward to claim it. He was brother of the king. It was his by birth. Robin stepped forward and proclaimed that Arlo was rightfully king. Without him, there would be no kingdom to rule. He had proved himself on the peak. He was not alone. Leaders of the clans stepped forward and echoed their favor of the warden. Arlo objected. He had no claim here. Bertel slammed his staff into the floor to silence the rising voices. He had a secret to tell. Arlo's father was King Rattus. Bertel himself had delivered him as a child to the warden. He had a claim, if he was willing to take it. Arlo felt the truth of it, and the paw of destiny seemed to push him forward to take his place upon the throne. Bertel placed the crown upon his head. The weight of rule was his now. Dennis had been forgotten in the shouts of joy from the clans. He raised his blade and swore vengeance. It was his birthright, and he would reclaim it from this usurper. Arlo set aside the warden and became the king. A new dawn broke over the land, bright and clear. The king sensed it would not last. The promise of his half-brother would surely mean war would come again. But that, as they say, is a tale for another time.